Hello everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at commenting and white space. And I'm going to explain what those two things mean. Now, if you have your YouTube Hello World tutorial open, that's great. If you don't, go ahead and open it, or any solution for that matter. It doesn't really matter. We're going to go over this solution though together that we built previously, just so we can take a closer look at some things that I didn't get a chance to go over with, maybe not as in depth as before. So let's go ahead and go over and take a look at it now. Alright, so as you notice right here, this is green. When it's green, that means it's commented out, or it's a comment. The computer will actually skip this line, or any time that it has that, anything after it, it comments it out. See, I can put a comment right there. And see, it's green. If I run this, it's still going to be the same. It's not changing. So that's a comment. Now, remember in the earlier videos we were talking about documentation. The commenting, I think it's a part of a very important part of documenting your source code. Essentially, it's not so much for you, but it's for other developers, and it's just really a good idea to get into good practice of commenting your code. Right now, you'll be doing very small, very simple tutorials and whatnot, and it may or may not be useful, seemingly right now. However, the funny part is about that, though, is as you learn, you never really actually memorize any of these things that we do. You make samples for yourself that you will use later on. I consistently use little snippets and samples and whatnot of code that I've done with very small tutorials. And I comment my code specifically for that reason, because I don't try to memorize everything, because it's impossible to memorize everything. You want to just memorize essentially the basics. You don't want to memorize, this is exactly how I'm going to make this label. That says hello world, and I'm going to, set its XY position exactly like that. You don't want to memorize that part. What you want to memorize is that you're taking an object, that you're changing its location to equal a new point. And its new point, it's going to have a new X value and a new Y value. That's simply all you want to memorize. If you want to memorize anything out of this entire thing, that's all I would probably memorize. The next part, of course, is you want to know how to make a comment. To make a comment, you simply just do that. And then whatever you type after it. Now, using our example though, what I've done here with my comment is I've stated exactly what this does. And that's exactly what a comment should do. It should state exactly what line that follows what it does. We're saying the label object position or location equals the X form width divided by 2, and the Y equals the form height divided by 2. So our comment is pretty much about as accurate as it could possibly be, what you would want essentially. Now, all comments are not going to be that simple. Some comments may be a little longer than others, and some may be shorter than others. It just depends on whatever you want to put in your comment. Now, we don't want your life story in a comment, but we do want a good description of what's going on in the next line that follows. Now, another thing to keep in mind though as well is you work on bigger projects. Other developers are going to have to read your comments, and they're going to depend on your comments. So it's really a good idea that you write good comments. Now, there is a difference between VB though and C# though when it does come into commenting, and I'm going to show you real quickly. In C# you could simply type, help me out here, I believe it's *forward, and then you could basically write multiple lines as much as you want, and then until you typed that, it would stop commenting. I mean, it's either one or the other. It It's either that way or the reverse on the asterisk. It's funny other. But that's in C#. Unfortunately, in Visual Basic, we don't have that option. You can't comment, paragraphs. Which, coincidentally, is kind of good because commenting paragraphs kind of teaches you bad habits. It really does. Now, what you will commonly see in a lot of copyrighted material is you'll see a comment up here like this. Make sure I get this right. You'll see something like this typically. And this is in like professional code, like if you're, let's say you were opening up Microsoft's code or something, you're going to see some kind of copyright notice. And they're probably going to spell copyright, they're probably going to spell reserved correctly, unlike me. So, that's probably what you're going to see very commonly. Now, let's say that we want to write a comment. We're never going to write a comment. We're just going to say hello world, hi again, or something like that. Alright. And let's say that this is uncommented. So now we have multiple lines that we want to comment. So what we can do with Visual Studio will allow us to do is to highlight that, and then we have comment out section, and automatically will comment that out for us. Now we can also do the same. We can also uncomment. Now I need to comment this out, and I'll just click right there. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you guys about is white space real quickly. Some things are white space sensitive and some things are not white space sensitive in Visual Basic. I'm just going to go ahead and say, though, go out on a limb and say it's not necessarily white space sensitive. What that means is the space in between here. All this space does not bother it. In C#, I found commonly in C#, a lot of times, even though I think it's supposed to not be white space sensitive either, there are a lot of times where I've had a lot of errors due to white space in C#, even though it's not supposed to. Some other things that you need to know is that would probably work too, but that's just bad format. And it's talking about the white space in between there. I don't recommend that you do that, but you can. Here's how the computer, though, is going to read this, because it's going to ignore white space. And please never ever do this, because nobody will be able to read your code and we'll all just hate you forever. Seriously, we will. That is essentially how your computer is going to read that line. And it's going to throw me an error because this is a keyword. And there's no space there. But essentially your computer is going to read this as just one solid string. Or one solid line, essentially. With no spacing for the most part. Except for when it hits keywords like this. Other than that, it's not going to really have any spaces in there, essentially. It's a computer. It's just looking for keywords, essentially, in commands and whatnot. So, anyway, that's commenting, and that is also the white space. Another thing to keep in mind, though, about the white space, it's just good to put spaces in between things, because it's easier to read. Alright, so if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, please feel free to comment and post. Alright, thank you.